1078 officer in need.
What's up, guys? It's Matt from the 1078 Project. Hey, if you're new to the organization, a little bit about us. The 1078 Project is a non-profit organization that's been founded and developed by law enforcement officers who have been involved in critical incidents and officer-involved shootings. Our goal at the 1078 Project is to provide mental, spiritual, and practical support to law enforcement officers as they navigate the difficult times surrounding an officer-involved shooting. With that being said, let's dive into today's episode, and I'll see you on the other side, boys. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest is a homicide detective in Miami and the co-founder of the Bleeding Blue nonprofit. Today's guest is Danny Morales. What's up, Danny? How you doing, man?
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm pretty good. Now that we finally figured out how to get this whole thing rolling for our listeners, I spent about an hour wasting Danny's time trying to figure out exactly how to get this virtual podcasting thing to work. But we got to figure it out. So I'm happy to have you, man. Everything you're doing with Bleeding Blue is pretty awesome, and we'll dive into that later. But what I like to do with my podcast is give you the opportunity to tell your own story and kind of what your life has been like and what led you to Bleeding Blue and what you're doing in law enforcement now. So you're in Florida. Did you grow up in Florida?
Yeah, so I born and raised in Miami, a little town called Hialeah. It's probably where a lot of the Cubans are from, and went to elementary through high school there. My first job in Miami, so I don't really know anything outside of Florida for that. I traveled a little bit, but Miami's hometown. So
really, isn't that like the town on Grand Theft Auto or something?
yeah, you might strive through it a little bit, and it's probably where a couple of robberies were on Grand Theft Auto. But
yeah. Are you Cuban?
yeah. Cuban. I was born and raised here, but my mom is her parents are from Cuba. She was born in New York, and my dad was Cuban, actually immigrant. Actually was arrested when he came over to the United States. So
no way.
Yeah.
Really, that's awesome.
American dream.
Yeah. So what has it been like growing up as with first generation immigrant parents?
Yeah, I mean, so pretty much it's everyone else in this small town is pretty much the same. And Miami overall is huge, but it's the same culture. Everyone's Cuban for the most part. Everyone has pretty much the same story. Their parents migrated from their country, just to have a better life for their family. So you kind of growing up around people with the same story, and you kind of just make it your own. Make the best out of it.
That's awesome, dude. You said your mom lived in New York. You've only lived in Florida?
Yeah, so I want to say she came over when she was a lot younger. She was born there, but wasn't really raised there in New York. She moved to Miami. My entire family's from Miami, from, everybody that I associate with, at least. Basically my entire life is here. So even if I think about going anywhere, I would definitely end up coming back over here for the holidays at the minimum.
Yeah. Awesome. What got you into law enforcement? Got you interested in law enforcement?
So my parents are divorced. My stepfather is a retired law enforcement officer. He worked for Hialeah, that small little town that I told you about. And he retired a couple years back. And just growing up in the household, going out to those police events back and forth. Whether it was some type of Christmas event or taking lunch to him while he's working in off duty somewhere. We were always involved in it. He was a motorcycle officer, so going to the motorcycle rodeos every year and watching him compete, and then riding around in our scooters and stuff, we meet everybody, hanging out. That kind of obviously influenced me. My high school was actually right next to his police station, so he would go to work. I would walk to my high school from his station, and my school was a police and fire school, so it was kind of just in the blood. I have an older brother that's also a sergeant with Miami-Dade. He started out before me. So when I turned 18, I finally applied, and it's been uphill ever since.
Yeah. How old were you when your stepdad came into your life?
I want to say like 3 or 4. Yeah.
Okay, so he's a huge part of your life. What was it like growing up with a cop as a dad?
Pretty scared. I mean, my biological father is
Yeah,
still in the picture, night and day, two different people. Um, both of them are huge role
really.
models in my life, but just I lived with my mother most of the time, so my stepdad was always there. It was, something that you always looked over your shoulder no matter what you did. Whether it was running around on the streets, just being a kid, or playing ball and cutting somebody off, and you're like, "Damn, I was going to get back to my parents or something." Whatever it was, just having him there was being an officer himself, it was just kind of scary, I would say. All my friends
Yeah,
were doing drugs, and I was always like, "No, my parents told me I can't do that," which I'm glad I did it. Right? But
yeah,
I was always kind of scared of what would happen if they found out.
yeah. Um, is Jorge Masvidal really the king of Miami?
He's up there. He's up there. He's up there. I don't know. You see him kind of walking
Yeah,
around in the same streets. That might be a nice little fight there.
yeah,
But
yeah.
he grew up from the streets,
Yeah.
man. I mean, he was down in the hood, in the shit, down in Paran, Bulls, that area down there. And
Is that a really, really
yeah,
rough area?
yeah. I would say I'm a homicide detective now, and that's probably where we get the most of our cases.
Really?
We stay busy.
So let's do a little background on Miami-Dade real quick, because you always hear. I think the first time I ever heard of Miami-Dade was on First 48. I think First 48 like followed around Miami-Dade homicide for a long time. I don't know if they still do or if they have recently, but I think that if I remember correctly, they followed around Miami-Dade, and that's the only understanding I have of like what Miami's really like. So what is Miami-Dade? If you had to like give some dude from Missouri uh, a bit of an understanding of what Miami-Dade is like, what would you tell
I
me?
mean, police wise, it's broken up into I want to say we're 37 different municipalities. Miami-Dade is the sheriff's office down
Oh,
here. And so we have a little over like 4,000 officers. The first 48 is actually the city of Miami. So when you think of downtown Miami, uh, Brickell, which is the nicer part, there's a little couple pieces there that the city of Miami handles. They're the ones that were on the first 48. I personally work for the
okay.
county. Um, so Miami-Dade County is it's who I work for, but there's a bunch of different agencies, and Miami Beach is a whole separate agency themselves. You know, when you get to the larger areas, they typically have their own police department.
That's kind of how St. Louis is. Like St. Louis Metro has their own police department. Then there's a bunch of little tiny municipalities just outside of St. Louis City that used to be their own police department. And most of them have been absorbed by like the county or by another organization. And then you have the county who services the entire area. So um, I just can't think about working at a police department that's 4,000 people. That's insane to
Yeah, I
me.
mean, you occasionally you run into people and they're like, "Hey, do you know so and so?" And you're like, "I'm sorry, can't relate, man." It's huge.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Does Miami-Dade have their own academy?
Yeah, so we have our own training center. It's actually a lot longer. So state of Florida requires you to do 6 months. Our Miami-Dade Police Department requires you to do 9 months. So it's a little bit longer. They go once you take the state exam, you go into like all the fun stuff, tactical rifle, tactical lifesaver, um, crisis intervention training, stuff that the state doesn't require you to have, but the department wants you to just come out onto the road with those trainings already. So thankfully, and that's actually a sponsored academy as well. So you're getting paid while you're there. It's paid to study and get screened at. So
What was the process of getting employed there? Like, how long have you been a police officer?
6 years, a little over 6 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the overall atmosphere surrounding law enforcement recruitment, at least, is went over the last probably 10 years has went significantly down. So was it easy to get like sponsored to go in, or was it difficult?
So in 2017 is when I started the academy. Prior to that, I graduated high school in 2014. It took me three years to basically get something back from the police department. I was working as a pharmacy tech. At one point, I actually was like, I'm not getting anything back. I'm just going to go to pharmacy school. So I started going to school for that. And that was, when do I get an email? The process from there moving forward was pretty much like 7, 8 months between the psychological exam and all that good stuff. And then you jump into the academy. I would say right now we're actually having trouble filling the academy classes. We're not getting enough applicants, and they're actually lowering the standards for applicants, which is pretty insane to me. But they had raised it up to 21 with
it's
a degree.
happening nationwide, dude.
Yeah, so it's
like nationwide. It's everywhere.
It's kind of sad, honestly. At one point they were getting 8,000, 9,000 applicants. They would have to close these application periods a lot closer and just be like, hey, listen, we got too many applicants, come around the next one. And now we can't even get, anywhere near what we were at before.
The same thing's true for us too. I think, so I got in law enforcement in 2012. And when I applied for the city that I work for now, I think, I want to say I was like one of maybe 70 people that put in, somewhere around there, maybe even more. I can't remember. And I didn't get a job. They gave me like a jailer position. And I was like, it was a place that I wanted to work. So I was like, sure, whatever. It's a foot in the door. I can prove myself. I was 21 years old. So I didn't think anybody was going to hire me anyways, because it was so competitive. And now I want to say the last academy class that I taught at had 12 people.
Wow.
13 people, something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Nobody wants to do this job, dude. And I don't blame them, man. It's like, why would you? Why would you want to do this job right now?
Go be a firefighter.
Like your second guest. And, yeah. Go be a firefighter. Wow. Everybody loves you. You don't have to do anything. You get to eat and cook while you're working. And, it's the best of both worlds. So the academy, you said, was 9 months long, and it seems like they try and prepare you, because if I'm judging the situation correctly, new guy's probably going to get thrown into a relatively hot area.
Yeah, so I actually got very lucky with that. My class had 52 people in my graduating class, and then right around within that year, I want to say there was like probably 4 or 5 classes that came out. So our county is split up in 8 districts, and I got pretty lucky. I got a decent area, started up in the road, and spent like a year and a half there on the road.
Do you remember your first hot call?
No, it's a blur. It's so many. The call volume is insane. Even being in a chill area where everyone always messes around with you and like, oh, you're just drinking cafecito, Cuban coffee. That's all you're doing all day, while we're over here chasing bad guys. And I'm just like, that sucks to be you, I guess. But honestly, that even in the nice areas, the call volume's high. And then as I just went on my career, I've always made it a point to do bust my ass to make it to where I'm at. I think my work ethic speaks for itself, considering where I'm at in such a short amount of time.
It's one thing about Cubans, man.
Gotta make it happen.
Cubans are hustlers. Yeah.
Some of us will do it the right way. Some of us will fraud ways.
Yeah,
what type of media attention you want?
Yeah. So what shifts did you work when you first came out? Were you guys on 12s?
So we've naturally, for the most part, always been on 5/8s. There's some units now that are doing 4/10s. You never, as a rookie, obviously, you start on mids after your FTO phases and stuff like that. So you have the shit schedule. You got the shitty days off. Sometimes it's actually better to get rephased and stay on FTO phases for a little bit so you can get weekends off. But I started off on mids, and I want to say for the most part, I spent a lot of time on mids.
Okay. And you guys work 8s? I hated 8s.
Yeah.
When I was on it, you just felt like you were always at work.
Yeah.
Like you never really had a day off. It seems like you were constantly going into work.
And then you have Tuesday, Wednesday off, so it's like, what the hell do you do on a Tuesday and Wednesday? So.
Yeah, that's something I didn't. Megan McCarthy, I talked to her. I think that was her that I was talking to. It was either her or I can't remember who it was, but I think it was her. They're talking about like your shift rotations. You may like get. Actually, I think it was Travis Gribble or however you say his last name. He was talking about like he worked for Mesa, or Arizona, and like your shift rotation was like you worked afternoons and you were set to have, like a Tuesday, Wednesday off or something like that. It's like you never had a weekend off. Like at least like our schedules, like it doesn't matter if you're the new guy or you've been there 1,000 years. Our schedules are exactly the same. We work 12-hour shifts. Our rotations are the same. You have every other weekend off. It's just the way that the
I
shifts work.
wish.
So really, so what was so you would have like a Monday, Tuesday off, and how long did you stay on that
So
rotation?
there's a shift every 4 months, and as a rook, obviously you're gonna get the worst of the worst. As you gain a little bit more seniority, you're probably able to get to maybe like a Thursday, Friday, or something like that. But you'll never get that full weekend. Um, the senior guys, even the senior guys, if I'm not mistaken, always have partial weekends, maybe like a Sunday, Monday, or a Friday, Saturday. But a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or
Really?
Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, that's usually for those detectives or um, the gang units and stuff like that. But as a road officer, every 4 months you're switching bids. You bid for it, um, and if you want afternoons, you put in for afternoons unless somebody bumps you out. Same thing for day shift and whatnot. But until you have seniority, you're on the shit of midnights.
Oh
Yeah,
man, that sucks. We do a 4-month rotation so we work 4 months on days, 4 months on night. We're obviously on 12-hour shifts though, so there is only 2 shifts that you can work. Which the good thing about 12s is you have a lot of days off.
yeah,
It's like every other weekend off, and so you have a long week that really sucks to work, where you work 5 out of 7 days, and then the next week you only work 2 days, which
I
is
want you
nice.
to think of me next time you complain about your shift.
Yeah. I can't believe that, dude. I don't know how guys stay at big cities like that. That would be insane. Like you work in, you know, years with a Tuesday, Wednesday off on nights. That would be horrible.
So right now they're starting to change it to 410s or what is it? 410s. For some districts. So like if you're in the South District, everybody in the district will have 410s. But then you can go to like North Side, which is another district, and it's 5/8s. So it just depends where you work, who the supervisor is there, and it's kind of weird that it's not the same across the board, considering we're the same department. Um,
Hmm.
but then again, if it makes sense, we do not do it.
Yeah. I worked 10-hour shifts when I first got into law enforcement, and if I could stay on a shift for the rest of my career, it'd be 10s. It was the
Yeah,
best shift that I ever worked.
I had it for
It
maybe
was
like
just
three
enough
months.
time, like 8s, you get just enough time so you're off, like you work a long enough shift that you have a couple more days off, because that's the problem with 8s is that you're constantly at work and never seems like you have a day off. And then 12s, the shifts are just really long, so I work from 5 o'clock in the afternoon till 4 o'clock in the morning because I have a dog. So you get an hour of kennel time, but most guys are working 5:30 to 5:30 or 6:30 to 6:30, and that's a long shift
Yeah,
work. But
yeah, it's definitely an option.
so at the beginning of your career, like let's go through field training. What was field training like? Did you have the same field training officer through your whole rotation, or did you switch through field training officers, switch through districts or areas,
So
or
you stay in
how'd
the
that work?
same district. So I was in Midwest District Station 3, for what we call it down here. You go through all three shift bids. Basically, I think I started on days. I did days, midnights, afternoons, and then my last your phase 4, which you're basically by yourself, but you have a shadowing officer. You went back to days. My trainers are great, man. I can't complain, honestly. They taught me a lot. My phase 2 FTO actually dealt with my shit because I decided to get LASIK eye surgery in the middle of my field training, and that was rough. But it was just always like getting out of the car with my glasses on, and I was fogged up, couldn't see. I was like, damn, what if I get in a fight? I can't, I lose my glasses or something. So I got the surgery. I was like, why not? And I came out to the road a week later, and I was like, I can't see shit. So it was definitely it
Really?
was interesting, but they roughed it out with me, and made it through.
What's it like being a road cop in Miami?
The call volume is high, man. Um, I would say for the most part, people respect us, depending on where you work. even in the good areas, you're gonna have those people that don't respect the police. I would say that in Miami, you have a lot of Hispanics, and the Hispanic culture is um, like a masochist, basically. So you have all these like Hispanic men that you come and you tell them what to do, or you tell them they need to do this, and they see a 23, 22-year-old kid at that point in my career, and they're just like, I'm not going to listen to you. You can be my son, and they don't respect you. So they may respect the badge and they may respect the
Mm.
uniform, but they don't see, they see the person, and then they just like, okay, I don't, this is a kid, So when you're going to a domestic violence on a, Cuban household, that guy's not listening to you. So it's one of those things where they may respect the uniform, because typically the Hispanics left communism to come to a better country. They may not respect you as a
Mm-hmm.
person.
Yeah. That's like a super interesting. We have surprisingly, we have a pretty large Hispanic population in the area that I work. And they're always really, at least from my interactions, they've always been very, very, very like respectful of the police. Like they don't, unless they're
Yeah,
drunk, um, then then it is what it is. But like they're always very respectful. They're always like, okay, okay, and I never really considered that it's likely because of the area that they came from. You know what I mean? That the police in Mexico or the police in Cuba or the police in all these other Latin countries are not going to play the same way that the police in the U.S. Like you don't get that leeway in other
it's my
countries.
personal opinion, man. I think at the end of the day, like you put a Spanish kid and an American raised kid together in the same exact scenario, you're
Uh-huh.
going to have completely different looks in it. And I think for the most part, these kids that are grown and raised in the States take things for granted. They're entitled. Whereas kids that grew up with absolutely nothing and they were out there in the streets, hustling at 10 years old, 12 years old, and didn't have anything, weren't given anything, had to work for it, have a different understanding and value of life. So they respect the police a little more.
Yeah, they're like immigrant mindset, like that, like work for everything that, like nobody's going to give you anything. You got to grind and work for everything. I grew up relatively poor, so I had like, I'm obviously from the U.S., but I kind of had a little bit of that mindset, like nobody's going to give me anything. I have to grind and work for everything that I get because that's just how my parents were. Like we grew up. I grew up in a really rough area, and that's just what my parents did. They just worked and grind, and they set that kind of standard that that's what's going to be acceptable. Like no, the world's not going to give you anything. You're going to have to work for everything. And I think that poverty makes the best people, to be 100% honest. I think growing up impoverished makes you into a better person. I try and balance that with my own kids now because, my wife's a neonatal intensive care nurse and I'm a policeman. I make pretty good money. She makes pretty good money. Our kids don't really want for anything. Sometimes I try and push that struggle on them a little
Do your
bit.
chores.
Like, you need to find a way to work for something.
That's how I was raised, man. I mean, I didn't go without anything. Anything that I wanted, I had. At 14 years old, my mom made me go work at Publix, local supermarket. It was more expensive for her to take me to work, spend money on gas, buy me lunch, and pick me up 3 hours later because I was a max I could work than the check that I was getting every 2 weeks. But it teaches you that discipline and that work
Yeah.
ethic. So yeah, I'm thankful for that.
Yeah. In an 8-hour shift, like how many calls for service do you think that you would get?
Am I a lazy cop or am I a
Is it just
proactive
call
cop?
the call the call?
Um,
Like you
yeah.
in
So
particular,
being
like
being
you
proactive,
seem like you're a pretty
yeah.
proactive
So being
guy.
proactive, you could probably knock out like 15, 16 decent calls, and that's just like not even doing. Those are calls for service. Maybe in the area that I worked in a higher volume area, you're probably going to hit close to that 20, 30 mark, and that's not including like any proactive work that you're doing in between those calls.
Yeah. Can you do a lot of self-initiated activity, or are you so busy that you kind of just bounce from call to call to call to call?
You kind of learn how to do it. You got an alarm call, and then you're just going to sit on that for a few minutes, drive down the street, try to get a traffic stop or something. But there's some supervisors out there that will tell you, hey, get off that traffic stop and go handle calls. The calls are holding, and unfortunately, that's all they care about is the calls being handled and not the arrests. So it just depends, man. It depends on
Yeah.
the way the sun rises and the moon sets. So
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a really super, like everybody always asks this question, but why did you get into law enforcement? Like what was it about law enforcement that like you were like, man, I want to do that?
honestly, bro, I don't have that basic answer. It was just growing up in it. You know, it's all I really knew. It's all I ever saw. I hate school. I can't stand it.
Hmm.
And you know,
Me too.
the pharmacy life while I was there, I was making good money. I was a tech, but I saw that I was like I'm maxed out at $23, $24 an hour. I can't do anything with this. Anything else that I want to do, I got to go to school for. Um, you know, so I had put in for it. It was familiar to me, and honestly, it was the best thing I ever did in my life, man. I make great money. I'm blessed. Man, you know, working homicide investigations is super rewarding. I learned a lot, and now I'm getting to teach exactly everything that I've learned at such a young tenure in the career. And if I wouldn't have done this career, I would have started bleeding blue, and that's my baby. So,
Yeah. So is there any calls that stand out to you on your time on patrol? Anything like, man, this call would like defines my time on patrol?
I
Anything
wouldn't
that you
say a
can remember?
call. I would say it was, so like I said, I tried being proactive. So I was, you know, I volunteered my time on a day off to come in and on MLK Day. You know, it was, what do they call it? Wheels up, guns down, one of those initiatives.
Hmm.
And, you know, we had set
Yeah.
up a box around the gas station. We had a CI who told us that, you know, pretty much this is where they were going to, you know, pump gas before they hit the road and stuff. So we hit the box. My role was supposed to be inside the box to try to get hands on. And, you know, I go hands on with some guy. He ends up jumping on an ATV and he runs me over, fracture my leg. But I didn't catch that fracture
Uh,
until I pursued in a foot chase. So after that foot chase, that subject that ran me over was able to jump on another bike and take off. We ended up grabbing another guy, and then there's actually a video that was posted on one of the local social medias that you could see me grabbing the subject and putting cuffs on him, and then just started screaming because of the pain. So the adrenaline like went away at that point, and that one was frustrating to me
really?
because you know this guy's fleeing from the cops. He ran me over. He fled again. Then we caught him a day later. We go through all the court proceedings and all that good stuff. You know, I was out of work. I lose money. Um, my ankle's never the same, and they gave him a year probation.
Sorry to interrupt the episode, but we got some big, exciting things happening with 1078. As you guys know, we sell merch, and that's been going pretty well. We decided to drop 2 more t-shirts, one of which I think you guys will think is hilarious. Head over to the website, www.1078project.com. Click the merch button. It will take you to our merch store where you can purchase a shirt. Just so you guys know, all the proceeds from those shirts, all the profits from those shirts are getting donated back to the nonprofit, and it's a way for us to continue to do the work that we have been doing. Also, we have big news as well. We're having a trivia night. It's on 9/20. If you're looking to attend the trivia night, again, go to the website, www.1078project.com. Go to the events tab, and you can register. All the information that you'll need is there. Guys, this is a really big deal to us. This is the way that we fund all of our operations. If you're a business, you're looking to sponsor the trivia night, again, you can reach out to us, or you can go to the website, to the event tab. All of our contact information will be on there. Hit us up. We'd love to have your support. We've also loved to have you guys at the trivia night. I'll stop talking so we can get back to the episode.
Oh, that
Really?
pissed me off. That's when I was just like, I need to get off the road.
Yeah. Is that like a big thing, like ATVs and stuff? Is that a big thing in
It's
your
huge.
guys' area?
It's huge.
Really? We don't have any of that. Like, I don't know. I've never, like, we have motorcycles, obviously, like sports bikes and stuff that drive around all crazy, but we don't have like that. I've seen videos on social media of like whole gangs of people all riding like ATVs and dirt bikes in like middle of city streets.
Yeah,
That's
no.
like real. That
So
happens.
on those specific holidays and stuff like that, we'll have our local troopers. They'll shut down the highways, basically all the entrances to the highway, Three, four, 500 pikes, just coming down the road, and they're just all following together. So we kind of try to divert them to keep them on the streets, but there's no proactive work here. If you can't ram into a ATV to get them off the bike, like that doesn't exist here. So unless you can put your hands on the guy and grab him off the bike, you're not grabbing him. So yeah.
What's the overall dynamic there? Are they like relatively loose on, or like punishments are really light? Like, what's the prosecution like? Is it pretty
It's
loose?
actually pretty loose, man. I mean, I've seen working some homicide investigations. I've seen 5 years for a murder, which is insane.
Really?
So imagine reckless driving on an ATV or a cocaine possession charge. It's pretty crazy.
I wonder why these cities get so out of control. Like St. Louis City is a perfect example. They don't charge anybody with anything in St. Louis City. It just doesn't happen. It's like, the guys down in the city. St. Louis is like per capita the most violent city in the country, and they just, you guys get into shootings, drive-bys, and prosecution super light. They're out in like a year, and then they're doing the same things. Or you run somebody's CQ, their criminal history, and it'll be this thick. You're like, how is this guy? Like, how is he doing? Like, how's he out? I don't understand. He's over the last 4 years, he's stolen like 12 cars. Like, how is this guy still out? How's he still driving around? But, yeah, we have the same problem, and I think it's just a major city issue. Like, they just don't prosecute crime the same way that like the county that I work in. You do a murder in the county that I work in, you were spending the rest of your life in
prison. It should
prison.
be, right? I mean, the biggest issue I think personally is our state attorney's office is just so understaffed, and the caseload is so high that all these cases get pushed to the side, or you don't investigate them to the fullest degree, or they're not able to prosecute them because they're stressed from the workload and stuff like that. They're also underpaid, so it's what's my benefit of spending so much hour on these 400 cases that I have as a new attorney? And so they all quit, and then one quits, and then now that caseload gets put on somebody else who already had a caseload. So it's just like a trickle effect. We do have the backing from like the governor. Our governor's DeSantis. He's pretty great. He supports the police. You got sheriffs up there like Lee County, Pasco County that are on all over TikTok. Yeah,
I've seen the videos.
Like, we don't have that in Miami-Dade. That's not us. But we do have the backing. Like, if you're justified, you're justified. We're not going to second look it. So
yeah, is Governor DeSantis? Is he also Cuban?
I don't know where he's from, to be honest with you. He has to be some Hispanic descent.
I think he's Cuban. I think so. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he is. So how much longer did you spend on the road after that incident? Like after the...
So I was on the road, but I did like a priority service squad where we just handled hot calls and, just tried to find stolen cars and stuff like that. So not necessarily calls. Yeah, like fun. A little jump out team, but you're in uniform. You have a marked car. So you're not handling calls for service. You're just responding, fucking shit up, and then leaving. So that was fun. I did that for a little bit.
Yeah. How long? So what was your goal when you got into law enforcement? Did you have like a goal of what you really wanted to do? Like, when I get into law enforcement, like for me, it was I wanted to handle a dog. Like, that was when I got into law enforcement. I wanted to handle a dog. That was the only thing I had. Like, I was that or be on a tech team. Those are the two things that I really wanted to do. What was it for you?
So yeah, I think it's the same for me. I think originally I wanted to do canine. I actually had bought a Belgian Malinois at home. She was a complete dud. I got sold a dream on that dog, and I got the complete opposite. So that was my initial thought was canine, and then I got an opportunity to go. So right after that proactive team, I got an opportunity to go to general investigations. I was doing person crimes, so handling attempted murders, contact shootings, and after my first, it was my first night actually. I got called out on my first night, and it was a pretty good contact shoot. And after that case, I knew that I wanted to go to homicide.
What do you mean? What's a contact shoot?
So it was person crime. So basically, an attempted murder. Somebody shot somebody, but they didn't die. Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. That makes sense. I've just never heard that term contact shoot before. So how long were you a jump op boy
I was
for?
short, 7-8 months maybe at that. Um,
Okay.
oh
Did
yeah,
you enjoy it?
yeah. I still have an itch for proactive work. Unfortunately, they don't let us do it in homicide, but I definitely loved it, and if that's where I end up one day, maybe in God's hands. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. For me too, man. I don't know how guys are detectives, to be 100% honest. I can't sit down and focus for that long. Like, one of my best friends is a detective, and like you can give him a case. So it was uh, like a burglary where somebody stole like $250,000. They stole a bunch of money from this family. It was an immigrant family. They didn't use a bank, so they had a bunch of money at their house. And these people somehow found out about it. They burglarized their house and stole all of their money. And that dude dove so deep into that case. It's what he thought about 24/7 for like 4 months. He ended up solving it somehow, some way. But I just can't sit down and focus for that long. I still want to be the guy that's on that team. It's like, okay, well, just tell me where the suspect is and I'll go get him. And then you guys can interview him. That's where I'm at in my career.
I like
Um,
both, honestly. It's I like I mean, obviously, being in homicide in 3 years in Miami, you handle a lot of cases, but the the proactive work
mhm.
behind things, I still have an itch for it. I still do traffic stops whenever someone pisses me off, and you just revert to your training. You remember everything that you've done, and you just like, okay, I can continue doing this. If God forbid I get kicked out on the side, like I'm okay going back to the road. Because it's fun. That's why you became a cop, is to do all the fun shit. Not just to sit there and push papers.
I think people forget that though. Everybody like wants to be off of the road. Nobody wants to work patrol. Everybody thinks like, oh, well, they forget that when they signed on that dotted line, they took that job, that the job that they signed up for was the dude wearing the uniform driving the police car. It wasn't, some other position. But guys forget, quickly that they signed up to be
Yeah,
policemen,
I think for me it was honestly that incident when I got run over and I saw there was maybe some lapse in the investigation that was, could have been done better. Probably would have cleaned the case up a little bit. Um, where I was like, okay, let me try and see this side of things. The opportunity presented itself, and I had 2 years on at that point, and I was like, no, this is not going to come around again. Let me take it. And weekends off, so that was a big sell. Yeah.
That'd be real nice. If I only had Tuesday, Wednesday off, I'd definitely be working towards that weekend off. Um, how disheartening was it whenever that guy only got a year of probation?
So cases here typically take 3 to 4 years to go to trial. So at that point, when he went to trial, I was already over it. I was just like, whatever, dude. Like, it is what it is. I remember his attorney came up to me after the trial and told me, he goes, Danny, great job up there. This guy's a shitbag. We won that. And just told me straight up. And I was just like, he's a representative. I was like, what the fuck? But it's
Yeah.
honestly, man, at this point,
I kind of like that though. Seeing behind the defense attorneys, there's like a local defense attorney that does DWIs in our area, and if you're on the stand with him, he's gonna try and chew you up and spit you out, and he does it to so many cops. But he's like, afterwards, he'll come over and be like, "Hey, man, this is something you need to work on. Remember this. Remember this. See you
it's
next time."
it's
Like seeing behind the scenes sometimes
yeah,
with defense
it's not
attorneys is pretty
personal.
cool.
They're just doing a job, collecting a paycheck, go home
Yeah,
to their family.
just their job. Yeah, a fat
For
paycheck too.
sure.
So you get off patrol, you go into that proactive unit there, you're there for a short period of time, and then you get, like you said, it's called general
Yeah.
investigations.
Yeah. So general investigations is
So you're doing
split up into multiple units, but anything other than like major crimes. So thefts, harassing phone calls, burglaries. There was commercial burglary, there was residential, and then person crimes as far as like, contact shootings, contact shootings, drive-bys and stuff like that. Anything that's not a robbery, a sex crime, or a homicide, you're handling pretty much.
okay. Okay. So did you get thrown into the person side of things from the very beginning? Is that normal?
I think it was just where the opening was, to be honest with you. I, you know, I think if it would happen to anybody, it wasn't because it was me or somebody else. That's where the opening was, and we ended up being on call that night. And sure shit, the call came in, and they gave me the case, and then like, here, run with it. I had no clue what I was doing, but my team went out with me. We handled it, and it's yeah.
So what was your first case? What happened?
Basically a drug deal gone wrong. Guy showed up at a gas station to sell some
Okay.
drugs, and there was a chick involved in the middle, and pulled out a gun. He shot him in the elbow, or in the shoulder, I should say. Sorry, and they takes off. He flees. We end up finding the guy pretty quickly, and able to do like cell sites and put him on the scene and stuff like that because we couldn't get a clear image of his face. People weren't cooperating and stuff like that. But just going into an investigation day one, you're just like, you're used to writing these basic reports on the road where it's just like, mom told son to go home, took his phone, case card given, and now you're writing an
Yeah.
arrest form for attempted murder, So it was a big change. It was a big difference, and a little more details and stuff that needed to be added. But they throw you right in and figure it out as you go.
Yeah, I think the hard part's all the subpoenas and like you're trying to write search warrants for cell phone tower information, and that's like all of it's, there's templates for everything, and you don't, at least I don't have the templates. And I there's, I've written investigative subpoenas before, but not for like a homicide, so that would be, or not for like a serious shooting. Like our bureau normally takes over most of that. So I'm guessing it's the exact same way. So patrol goes out, they secure the scene, somebody from patrol writes like the initial report, and then you guys take it over from there.
Call out. So depending on what the criteria of that call is, there's a call out for everything. Especially in those districts where there's less crime, which was one of mine. So even if you have, my last case in that unit was actually like an old man that pushed somebody, and the guy fell and hit his head, and it was actually ended up becoming a homicide because the guy died. But something so simple as that, as an or a felony battery or something like that, general investigations will go hand in. Now, if you're in an area where it's higher crime, the road officer will handle that.
Okay. How long were you in general investigations? And is there any case from general investigations that really stands out to you? Like, oh, this one was my favorite one that I dealt with while I was there.
Probably like a year and a half. Let's see, a year and a half before I went to homicide. It wasn't too many. I mean, compared to the stuff that I handled now, I mean, one of the ones that I remember was just like a shooting at a bar dispute between two Cuban men. They were both drunk. One guy pulls out a gun, shoots him, takes off. But that was pretty neat because that guy was actually pretty smart. He had done time for attempted murder. He did 10 years prior to, just got out, shot somebody else. So he knew the game already as far as like, I gotta get rid of my phone, I gotta get rid of these clothes. Don't, not take my car home. I'm gonna take somebody else's car home. So the whole process of we knew exactly who he was right away. It was just trying to piece it all together so we can present it to the state attorney to make that arrest was pretty neat. So that taught me a lot, and it gave me that building block that I needed to know or not know, but give me something to go into homicide with.
Yeah. So were you like resume building the whole time you were in general investigations for homicide? Was that your goal from that point on?
Once I knew that I wanted homicide, it was more so like trying to figure out what these homicide guys do and what they want. So essentially, if it's an attempted murder case, guy gets shot, he's in critical condition, I'll handle the preliminary investigation, and then if the guy dies, we'll hand it over to homicide. So it's like learning from those experiences of, what did I mess up on, asking them questions, trying to figure out what I could do better, just picking their minds was like the main goal for me.
Yeah. Sounds like a good young policeman trying to get better. So when you go to like general investigations, is it still separated by whatever substation you're in or whatever smaller area that you're in?
My barking dog back there.
About to get bit by about to get bit by a Yorkie or something.
It's my mom's dog, actually.
Yeah. Is it like the same, like is there one singular homicide, or is there like homicide for this area, that area, this area? And the same thing for general investigations. Is it separated into a bunch of different like
Yeah, so
substations?
every district has its own general investigations unit. Homicide is for the whole county. So you'll handle whatever your square
Okay.
are, for that district, for Station 3, basically. Every station has its own general investigation. So, but once it's a homicide,
How many districts are
um,
there in all of
there's 8,
Miami-Dade?
and then the airport. Or, yeah, and then the airport.
How many people live in Miami-Dade
You got
County?
me there, bro. A lot. A lot. Yeah.
Really?
I'm not big into numbers like
Okay.
that, to be honest with you, but it's definitely overpopulated. Yeah.
It's huge. Okay. So you're in general investigations and you move to homicide. Tell me about homicide.
A whole another animal, dude. You start off in basically you're on probation for 6 months. You get assigned to a senior guy that's been there for 10 plus years. You're humping calls, 2 to 3 calls a day. We handle all types of deaths, so natural deaths, suicides, overdoses, accidentals. Yeah,
All deaths?
yeah.
So some old man who's 74 dies. Homicide gets called out
So
and goes
natural
and
deaths
takes
like
care of
that,
it.
where we have basically a doctor to sign the death certificate, we won't respond to, but everything gets reported through our office. So you still have to do some type
Okay.
very minimal documentation on those. But if, let's say, he's 74 years old, hasn't seen a doctor, and he's an alcoholic, you're going out to that because he has no doctor to sign. It becomes a medical examiner case. So our call volume in homicide is a lot. We get about 210, 215 murders a year, but the amount of cases that we respond to,
210. Wow.
I say that happily.
It's a lot, dude.
So, I mean, you're going out to all those junk calls in between. So, we call them junk calls. That's not the right term, but they're death investigations. And
Yeah.
you're just humping. You're the rookie. You're getting all the shit. Even if you're off and it's something you've never handled before, like an airplane crash, they're waking you up in the middle of the night to come handle it.
Have you handled an
Yeah, one
airplane crash
actually
yet?
landed right in front of our station. It was pretty crazy.
No way.
It's not too far from the airport, so it wasn't like too insane to think of oh, why did this guy land this plane here? So he just couldn't make it to the airport. It was probably like a mile and a half off. But yeah, I handled one of those. There's all types of stuff. We have trains that hit cars and people left and right. Boating accidents is pretty crazy. We had the Coast Guard run over some guy the other day. It was insane. Yeah.
The Coast Guard did?
Yeah.
Oh, great job, guys.
I won't say any names, but yeah, it's if you could think about it, we probably handled it.
So is it like tiered? So I'm guessing you go through like a field training process, and through that field training process, that 6-month period that you're under the supervision of another guy, you guys probably just get over inundated working nonstop, like every single case. Once you're kicked back to being on your own, is it like, hey, you're starting to handle the less severe cases until you can build up to another, or they just throw you into the fire and you just start dealing with whatever comes your way?
Once you're off that training phase, you just get thrown into a rotation. So there's a rotation between the 8 squads, and within each squad there's a rotation as well. So like my team has 4 to 5 people, 5 on a good day, when one of them decides to show up. But so you kind of just get thrown around in the rotation there, and you're just going through the motions. And same thing for death investigations, and then a rotation for homicides. So you're never going to handle a homicide back to back unless your entire team is off, which with my luck that happened 2 weeks ago. But so there's a lot, man. There's definitely a lot of work.
Yeah, how do you balance, like, if you get 2 fresh homicides, how do you balance that?
You just keep riding with it. You ride the wave. There's other teams out there. There's people that want the money, right? So overtime is unlimited, basically. So there's guys out there that you can call and just be like, hey, I know it's your Friday. I know you're with your kids, but I need help, and they'll show up. So you kind of just pick and choose those people that are workaholics, and they'll come out and help you. And then at the end of the day, for the job to get done, it needs to there's evidence to be recovered. There's people to interview and stuff like that. So there's no cap on the overtime. So you just kind of just roll through the hours, and before you know it, you're at a 30-something hour shift.
Do you remember your first homicide that you were the
Yeah,
investigator of?
open pending.
What was it?
You
Oh,
know,
it's open and
that's
pending. Ooh,
that case haunts me. It's actually a homeless guy. Um,
really?
he was found sliced up, and when I say sliced up, not completely, like it was just like open wounds basically across his body, but not completely like severed. He had 15
Yeah.
injuries like that, and he was dumped in a nursery. And it was a very big nursery. There was anything around that area, but it was in the middle of the night. So we figured we ended up finding a video of these two cars just leaving the area at a very high rate of speed, and they were following each other. We ended up following those cars for us, it was 2 weeks to recover all that video. We followed them for 6.3 miles until they hit like a major intersection and we
Really?
lose them. So we're following them on video. None of those videos can give us a tag. We end up figuring out who this guy is because he had no ID on him. He was ended up being a homeless dude, lived on the other side of town, and basically, from what we gathered, he was a homeless guy that used to go up to people and just kind of like steal their stuff. Nothing that would piss anybody off too crazy, but it was always like, "Hey, dude, like, why'd you do that again?"
What's up, guys? Thanks for hanging in there to the end of the episode. If you can't tell, there's more from Danny, and here's a sneak peek from next week's episode. So obviously being in homicide, you're overexposed to like everything negative. Like you're over like literally your whole job is to go
Yeah.
be with dead people. Like that's it doesn't go to homicide unless somebody dies, you know? So what are like does your police department provide any resources for you as a way to like, do they give you any counseling options or anything like that? Or have you went out of your way to try and get, any counseling, or is there like, how do you spiritually or how do you mentally deal with all of the terrible things that you would see through a
Yeah,
career in
so I mean, our
homicide?
department, being one of the largest departments in the Southeast region, we have a psych services unit within the department. So it's I believe it's like five psychologists or therapists that work within, and it's free. It's free to the officer and their family. That's something that I will never use personally. I don't want to go to psych services within my department. Everyone's different. I have
Mm-hmm.
sought out, therapy outside of work. Actually paid for without my insurance. And I'm a Christian, so obviously I believe in God and I pray and I go to church, and but I think a big thing for me is staying busy. Talking about it is huge.
Yeah.
So me and my partner are very good at, if you just went to a baby death, the baby drowns, that affected me. I'm gonna call her and I'm gonna be like, yo, this is what's going on. This is what I'm thinking about. This is messed up. Can we talk about it? Can we have a drink? Can we, do something about it? And, you have to have that open
Yeah.
communication with the people that work around you because they're the ones that are going to understand. I can't come home to my girlfriend and be like, hey, babe, this baby drowned. She's just going to cry with me. And I don't need someone else crying with me.
Yeah.
I need someone to uplift me. So it's a
Yeah.
little different.
Yeah.
Everyone's different, and the department does give us those resources. Unfortunately, I don't think that it's as readily accessible as they say it is, and I don't think that they promote it as much. Um,
Yeah. The fear too is like for guys, like what you just said at the very beginning is like, I would never go to that. And I know the reason probably why you'll never go to that is you don't want to cross those two worlds. You don't want to cross the work and the I'm not okay world. Like the fear is like, who is your alliance really? Like who are you aligned with? Are you really here to help me? Or are you really here for the department that I work for? And if I really am vulnerable, I'm really open and I'm really honest and I say something to you, um, are you going to go tell my bosses? You know? And I think a lot of departments, like there's been this big push for, mental health in law enforcement, and it's a lot of departments are like, okay, well, we can do it. Like we can get a counselor, or we can get a person to be at the police department. And think that a lot of times they're going to run into what you just said. Guys aren't going to utilize those resources because they're afraid of the stigma and they're afraid of where the alliance really lies.